a senior Chinese diplomat defected, handing top-secret CCP files straight to Putin. Xi Jinping has a hidden master plan to prop up a communist regime inside Russia if Putin falls. But Moscow's own classified files say it loud and clear. China is an enemy. Behind the forced smiles, China and Russia have already turned on each other. Welcome back to Final War with Katherine Hu. Today's story is like a real-life Hollywood spy thriller. The main characters? The two so-called best friends you see almost every day in the news, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. Just 1 year ago, images of Xi and Putin hugging circled the globe, with Xi Jinping even promising his support for Russia would be without limits. But just a year later, the story has flipped completely upside down, in ways no one expected. And it all began with a political bombshell that exploded in early July. On July 4th, the South China Morning Post dropped an exclusive scoop. It revealed that China tells EU it does not want to see Russia lose its war in Ukraine, because if Putin falls, America could shift more resources to the Indo-Pacific, directly targeting the Chinese Communist Party. This admission triggered a global uproar. Why? Because while everyone knew the CCP was secretly backing Russia militarily, and Beijing had always claimed it was neutral in the Russia-Ukraine war, now Wang Yi had just blown that lie wide open, exposing the CCP's true goal: to keep the war dragging on, so the US stays trapped in Europe. But why did Wang Yi suddenly let this slip? Does it signal a major shift in China's foreign policy? The answer came quickly, through a bombshell revelation from the independent Chinese outlet, Secret China. Wang Yi's slip wasn't an accident. It was damage control after a top Chinese diplomat defected to Russia, leaking a secret CCP playbook. A classified plan on how to deal with Russia after a potential collapse of the Putin regime. On July 12th, renowned Chinese dissident scholar Yuan Hongbing, based in Australia, confirmed the whispers circulating inside Beijing's political circles. He revealed that Wang Yi's slip-up was deliberate, a forced response aimed at calming an infuriated Vladimir Putin. Yuan Hongbing, citing information from CCP insiders, revealed the detailed inside story.
The incident originated in late May 2025, when an official from the confidential division of China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, having been subjected to suppression and mistreatment by his superior, fled to Russia in anger to seek political asylum. In exchange, he handed over a top-secret document from the Chinese Communist Party as his token of allegiance. The content of this classified document concerned the CCP's response plan in the event of Russia suffering defeat in the Russia-Ukraine war and a catastrophic collapse of the Putin regime.
It is clear that the content of this classified document revolves around the Russia-Ukraine war. Yuan Hongbing also provided specific details of the shocking contents. First, the plan made a fundamental assessment.
In the event of a catastrophic collapse of Putin's regime, the United States and Europe will inevitably do everything in their power to install a pro-Western political force in Moscow and seize control over the governing power of Russia.
The CCP, following Xi Jinping's strategic directives, formulated two contingency responses in this plan based on different scenarios. The first contingency plan stated,
if circumstances permit, support the Communist Party of the Russian Federation, or a multi-party coalition centered around the Communist Party of the Russian Federation, to take the lead in determining Russia's national political direction and to rebuild the state foundation for the international communist movement in Europe.
The second contingency plan stated,
If, due to strong intervention from the United States and Europe, the first option cannot be realized, and it becomes impossible to prevent pro-Western political forces from establishing a regime in Moscow, the CCP must forcefully support political forces led by the Communist Party of the Russian Federation to establish the Eastern Russian Federation along the Ural Mountains. At the same time, the CCP will decisively deploy troops to secure the vast territories east of the Urals, stretching all the way to the Pacific and Siberia, so as to provide sufficient strategic depth and a backup energy base for the CCP in the event of a Taiwan Strait War.
How should we understand these two contingency plans? The first plan is quite straightforward. If Putin's regime collapses, Beijing will back the Russian Communist Party to stage a comeback, restoring a communist government in Russia. The second plan goes even further. If the Russian Communist Party fails to seize power, China will back an armed separatist movement, forcibly splitting Russia into two. Beijing's goal? To carve out a so-called Eastern Russian Federation, turning it into a CCP-controlled puppet state. It's not hard to imagine how infuriating this must have been for Putin. So, how did the Kremlin respond? According to sources inside Beijing, by mid-June, the Russian Foreign Ministry had already handed the defector back to the CCP, along with his boss's wife, who fled with him. At the same time, Moscow delivered a formal diplomatic note to Beijing containing just one chilling sentence.
Russia is an unshakable, indestructible power and will remain a strong power. This strength is safeguarded by nuclear weapons capable of annihilating any potential enemy.
In other words, the real trigger behind this defection was nothing more than a scandal. A senior CCP official from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had an affair with his boss's wife. Once it was exposed, he fled to Russia to avoid retaliation. So why did Moscow hand him back? The answer is obvious. Beijing and Moscow cut a deal. At the end of the day, Russia is heavily dependent on China for military and economic support. And Putin isn't ready to burn that bridge just yet. According to Yuan Hongbing, this diplomatic defection was classified as top secret by the CCP. But with the current turmoil inside the regime, widespread discontent, open resentment towards Xi Jinping, and constant power struggles, the CCP's so-called Iron Curtain of secrecy is full of leaks. This explosive leak sent shockwaves through Beijing's top leadership because it openly exposed the CCP's brutal calculation to Putin. If things turn south, we won't hesitate to stab you in the back. Wang Yi was forced to step forward and make a public statement to Europe, declaring Beijing's firm support for Russia, an attempt to contain the diplomatic fallout caused by this damaging leak. According to Yuan Hongbing, the CCP is now scrambling to secure a secret strategic agreement with Russia, hoping to sign the deal during Putin's planned visit to Beijing on September 3rd, when he's scheduled to attend a grand military parade. The core of this secret agreement goes like this.
The Chinese Communist Party will support Russia's strategic ambitions in Europe, providing comprehensive and effective all-around assistance to help Russia restore the territorial boundaries of the former Soviet Union in Europe. This includes the entire territory of Ukraine and the 3 Baltic states. In return, Russia will formulate concrete and reliable plans to provide China with strategic depth and energy supplies in the event of a Taiwan Strait war. Russia will also assist the CCP in establishing underwater nuclear submarine launch sites in the Arctic to deter the United States. Furthermore, Russia will commit to exerting military pressure on Japan, undermining Japan's resolve and capacity to intervene in a Taiwan conflict.
Now, whether this secret strategic deal will actually get signed, we can't say for sure. With the current chaos inside Beijing, Xi Jinping may no longer have the power to push this through. But one thing is clear, this diplomatic defection lines up with everything we know about the current geopolitical landscape. And why is that? Because leaked documents from Russia itself show the Kremlin has been guarding against China all along. On June 7th of this year, the New York Times dropped a bombshell report titled, "Secret Russian Intelligence Document Shows Deep Suspicion of China." The report exposed an 8-page internal document from none other than Russia's Federal Security Service, the FSB, the country's top domestic intelligence agency. The document itself had no date, suggesting it might be a draft. But based on the context, it was likely written in late 2023 or early 2024. The New York Times shared the file with 6 Western intelligence agencies, and every single one of them confirmed its authenticity. This file was compiled by the 7th Directorate of the FSB's Counterintelligence Operations Bureau, DKRO, the division specifically tasked with countering Chinese and other Asian espionage activities. It offers the clearest look yet into how Russia's counterintelligence views China behind closed doors. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, Moscow's relationship with Beijing has become one of the most powerful, yet murky forces shaping global geopolitics. When asked about the leak, Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov declined to comment, and China's foreign ministry didn't respond at all. The Russian file describes how, despite their public friendship, Beijing and Moscow are locked in a tense and rapidly evolving intelligence war behind the scenes. The central takeaway? The CCP is viewed as an enemy of Russia. In fact, just 3 days before Russia invaded Ukraine, while Xi and Putin were publicly declaring a no-limits partnership, the FSB had already approved a new counterintelligence program designed specifically to counter Chinese espionage and protect Russian interests. That timing was almost certainly not a coincidence. At that point, Russia was pouring nearly all of its military and intelligence resources into Ukraine, over 4,000 miles away from the Chinese border, and the Kremlin was likely worried that Beijing might seize the opportunity to make its own moves. The FSB issued direct orders to continuously collect personal data from users of China's messaging app, WeChat. The document revealed this included hacking the phones of targeted individuals and using specialized software tools operated by a dedicated FSB unit to analyze all the intercepted data. The document further revealed that the FSB uncovered extensive CCP infiltration efforts, with Beijing actively recruiting Russian officials, experts, journalists, businessmen close to Kremlin leadership, and even Russians with Chinese spouses as potential spies. On one front, Chinese agents have flooded into Russia, trying to gather intelligence on the Russia-Ukraine war and extract battlefield lessons on how Russian forces counter Western weaponry. At the same time, Chinese operatives have been targeting Russian aerospace experts and even dispatching so-called academics to Russia's Far East, hunting for traces of ancient Chinese ethnic groups as justification for future territorial claims. The file also noted that as early as 2023, China's official maps deliberately labeled Russian cities with their historic Chinese names, further fueling Russia's suspicions. And beyond that, Chinese intelligence agents have used mining companies and university research centers as cover to conduct covert operations in the Arctic. So here's the reality. Russia has never truly trusted China, and China has never truly trusted Russia. It's clear that Russia has always been wary of China's ambitions in the Far East, and this leak only further confirms the CCP's hidden agenda to carve out an Eastern Russian Federation under Beijing's control. Second, the idea of using Russia's defeat to stage a communist comeback perfectly fits Xi Jinping's playbook. Ever since consolidating absolute power at the 19th Party Congress, Xi has openly declared his mission to revive global communism and preserve CCP rule at all costs. For Xi, backing the Russian Communist Party to seize power in post-war chaos is simply copying the old Soviet strategy, just like how the USSR once supported the CCP's rise to power. And all of this makes sense when you understand the true nature of the China-Russia relationship. Neither side ever saw each other as real allies. It's always been mutual exploitation, nothing more. This leak was a brutal wake-up call to Putin, telling him that if he loses the war, Beijing will be the first to stab him in the back. And that's exactly why Putin is now desperately clinging to power, determined to never let Russia lose in Ukraine. Get the real story behind the CCP's shifting power games and see where US-China relations are headed next. Support the vision of a new China without communism. Subscribe now and join us in bringing the truth to light.